My name's Angelo, and welcome to We Want Picks. This is the only channel dedicated to UFC fight picks and DraftKings lineups run by MMA insiders and professional fighters. Every week, I join Dan Kramer and Nick Newell, two longtime professional fighters that have fought at the highest levels on the planet, as well as Jacob Lyons, a skinny kid from Indiana. So join us every single week for our full fight card breakdowns, our individual fight card breakdowns, our betting guide, and our DraftKings lineups. Next up at UFC on ABC2, we have Jim Miller versus Joe Solecki. Don't let the graphic fool you. Jacob does the graphics. He's an absolute disaster of a human being. Can't type well, can't read well. His picks are actually decent. Anyway, this is an interesting fight. It's essentially the movie Gemini. I don't know if you've seen Gemini with Will Smith, where he fights a younger version of himself. That's exactly what we have here. I feel like Joe Solecki is a younger version of Jim Miller. I have Joe Solecki winning this fight by exactly how I would have Jim Miller beating an older version of himself. But I'll go to you, Nick. What are your thoughts here? How do you see this going?
This is an interesting fight. Joe Solecki just finds a way to get it done. I've watched his fights. I thought first Austin Hubbard would be a tough matchup, and he couldn't get the takedown really on Austin Hubbard, but just kind of like shot and then took his back and climbed up his back and choked him out. And Austin Hubbard has fought like world-class grapplers and went the distance and looked pretty good in those fights. And Joe Solecki just made it look easy. Jim Miller is just an all-around gamer, though. If you look back at some of his performances, he's fallen flat, but then you look at things like when he fought Dustin Poirier and he actually calf kicked him. Poirier couldn't even walk after that fight. He got out grappled and taken down. And the same thing kind of happened. He got out wrestled his last fight versus Vince Pichel. And he's tricky off his back. His striking is really good. He's got good boxing and good low kicks. It's not the most dynamic thing I've ever seen in my life. I think it might be a step ahead of Solecki in striking, but I think that Solecki could make it easier and make it kind of move around, take it to the ground and make it a grappling heavy affair. And I'm very impressed by him on the ground. He's not the most powerful wrestler, but he's more of a slick type guy. I'm going to pick Joe Solecki to win, but right now, I do have Jim Miller in my lineup because I do believe there's a possibility he could win. And I feel like even in a loss, he's going to score some good points. So right now I have him in my lineup. I might move him around, and Dumont is kind of like something I'm kind of figuring out and kind of playing with a little bit. But right now I have Miller in my lineup because if I had $100 to bet, I would bet on Jim Miller.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I was all aboard the Jim Miller train in his last matchup. He was matched up a few months ago when we first started doing this. And I was all about Jim Miller. I don't even remember who the opponent was. I think it was
Vince Pichel.
No, it was a fight that was
Roosevelt
canceled.
Roberts.
It was a fight that was canceled. And I was all about it. It was versus
Bobby Green.
Yes. I had Jim Miller over Bobby Green. I love that for Jim Miller. I was all about it. I don't think Jim Miller wins this fight, though. I think Joe Solecki. Sorry, I just read the nonsense Jacob types. I have Joe Solecki winning this fight. I think he out Jim Miller's Jim Miller. I think he out grapples him. He out positions him. And I actually have him in my DraftKings lineup. 9,100 is a lot, especially against Jim Miller. I don't have the records in front of me, but he's got like a ridiculous number of records in the UFC at this weight class. So it's tough to pick against him, but I just think it's almost a compliment to him that I'm picking against him because I think Joe Solecki is just a younger version of Jim Miller. But Dan, we're not even going to give Jacob an option here. He just ruined this for all of us. Dan, what are your thoughts?
He did pick a really good first name, though. I mean, if there's any name you're going to throw in there that
you're on my mind, Dan.
Nobody will be
You've
upset.
gotten 12-0 the last 2 weeks. I'm thinking,
Right. I mean, you can't blame him, Angelo. I mean, who goes 12-0? Of course he's thinking, Daniel, how do I do this? How do I do what he did? No, I mean, you guys nailed most of it. I mean, Solecki, I will say Solecki in his last fight, his boxing looked pretty crisp. I mean, obviously the wrestling is the story here, but His boxing looked like it was solid, and it looks, I mean, at his age, I think he's 27. He's probably improving every fight. He submitted Hubbard like it was nothing. That was almost too easy to where you don't learn that much about the guy. And then Wyman, who's been around forever, and I mean, he walked through him. He was smashing him, took him down, good ground and pound. So he's looked great his last 2 fights. I will say Jim Miller is a crafty veteran. He's good everywhere. He's a tough matchup, and he's 37, but like he still hangs tough. I just think matchup wise, this is a bad one for him. But with that being said, he's so crafty that he could pull off a guillotine or find a sub somehow. So I don't think I'm going to touch this in DraftKings. Solecki is definitely the pick. And honestly, if I were to touch it in DraftKings, I like what Nick said. He's like, I think Solecki is going to win, but I might take Miller in DraftKings. Like, this is one of those examples where Miller can probably hang tough enough to score some decent points, even in a loss at $7,100. Sometimes that's what you got to do. Unless you're me, I just go undefeated every week. So that's probably why I'm not going to pick him.
Well, this is going to be a tough week to go undefeated with 15 fights and 30 fighters to pick from. This will be a tough one. And we'll
I look at it as easier. There's just more wins for me to get. I mean, if we had more than 6 fighters to pick, I would, I'd probably be 8 now if there were 8.
Love the confidence. I love the confidence.
We'll see what happens. Next up at UFC.
I didn't even get to go. You really not going to let me go?
Oh, go back, Angelo. Let him go. Jesus.
I forgot. I honestly forgot. You're so insignificant to me.
That's some good analysis on this too.
Right. Come on.
Go ahead.
Let's hear about Miller's nickname or Daniel.
So this is the big analysis here that you guys are missing, and why Joe is in.
Yeah, let us know what we missed.
Jacob does come through with some good facts. You can't hate on him there.
I'm being serious about this.
Okay.
Being dead serious. So Joe just became a father, and he talks about how becoming a father has really balanced his training, that he has kind of the yin and yang of his life. It kind of balances his entire life. He also talked about there's a lot of these younger guys, when they meet the veteran, it's like, oh, I'm going to finish him in the first. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. He says, you know what? I'm punching in. I'm ready for 15 minutes. If I get a sub, if whatever happens, that's great. But I'm punching in ready for 15 minutes. This is why Joe made it in my lineup. Jim Miller is tough. And I thought, you're not going to finish Jim Miller. I think he's got 15 losses, 10 are decisions. You're not going to finish Jim Miller. But of the 5 losses he has, 3 of them are submissions. And they were the pretty good submission guys. Charles Oliveira, Michael Chiesa, and Nate Diaz. And Solecki, maybe he's not quite on that level, but I think he is. I think he's a nasty grappler. I think he uses grappling. And if Jim Miller is going to lose, it's going to be, submission loss. He's shown that in his career. So I think that's why Joe made it in my lineup. I think he wins. I think he wins by submission.
Yeah. So Jacob going with Daniel, and we'll see what happens. Before you go, check out the description below. In there, we have links to our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, and more importantly, to our DraftKings League. Check out the league, join the league, participate in the contests, and as we get going and as you start winning, we're going to start handing out gift cards and participating and doing things like that. So check those out. Every week, there are drops on every fight card. So make sure you check out this channel and our social media on Saturday before the fights start so that you have our most updated lineups and picks.